nothing to hold on to since you are fully connected to God. Activating the Merkaba, using tools, and specialized meditations will accelerate your effort. The primary emotional wounds are helplessness, not belonging, resentment and frustration, anger and rage, disappointment, desperation, loss, feeling trapped, despair, terror, heartsickness, shame, unrequited longing, overwhelm, violation, and martyr, victim, male or female. There are Aero Mandalas Orion series essential oil blends to address each of them. When I first worked with the essential oil blends that were channeled by Mary Magdalene and used to heal emotional wounds, I wanted to know how they worked. How could they be any better than any other of the amazing blends from other companies? What I was told and shown in the Akashic Records, by others, as well as by my own Akashic Records guides, is that they came through me, and my vibration has to do with the blends. They work synergistically with the meditations, intention disc, and other tools available on my website. Please check in for yourself if these will be helpful to you. How do they work? Emotions reside on the fascia. They create divots in the fascia that might not recover after the emotion is cleared. The oils clear the fascia. The intention disc clears the incoherent energy of the fascia, making it recover its original shape like your activewear when it comes out of the dryer. In a conversation in 2019, my business consultant asked, "What are you doing with the Aero Mandalas?" I answered that I felt I was not doing enough. I wasn't reaching an adequate number of the people who needed this simple solution to healing their emotional wounds. When she asked what I was willing to do about that, I laughed out loud and said, "I know what I will do. I will have a ceremony at the altar and ask Mary Magdalene about this." My ceremony included asking the following from Mary Magdalene: "Is it in our highest and best good to take the Aero Mandalas to another level? If so, will you provide your blessing and assistance? I would be willing to show up, sell that part of the company, hire a marketing expert, whatever was put in front of me to move them into the next level of consciousness." A few weeks later, I had a very interesting experience. I had purchased a violet laser from a company called Vibrance for clearing infections and fungus. This had been an ongoing problem for my lungs, and the laser definitely helped. At the next trade show where I was speaking, the same company was exhibiting, and when I asked my higher self if there were any other tools that would help me clear the last 10% of the remaining fungus, I was directed to the Vibrance booth again. This time I was guided to ask to use the frequency disc. This is a deceptively simple piece of black marble or granite about the size of a drink coaster that is coated with human DNA frequencies. Unsure if I should purchase it, I asked if I could borrow one. The rep in the booth, Joe, offered to loan me the extra one he had in his backpack until the morning. Since I was done with my presentations for the day, I took the disc with me into the main hall to listen to another speaker. After about 90 minutes I could feel my body shifting upward, and my personal guide came in and told me, "You have just phased up." By the time I returned to the Vibrance booth the following day, the fungus had completely cleared. Anyone who has dealt with a fungus infection of any kind knows how difficult it can be, and this fungus had settled into my lungs, causing all kinds of problems for almost 3 years. Joe's explanation of the metamorphosis is that the frequency disc held open the portal for me to walk into my DNA frequency. I now understand that when we have ongoing health issues, our body elemental can start to operate as if that were normal. 20 The body elemental has forgotten the ideal frequencies. Much as in a symbiotic relationship, the codependency, maintaining the status quo, becomes the operative frequency rather than holding on to the ideal frequency. The frequency disc helped me to remember. I returned to the booth healthy, happy, and excited to share my story of transformation. Joe suggested I share my story with the president of the company, who happened to be there that day, and my guides came in again and prompted me to ask him for help with the marketing of the Aero Mandalas, which I had in my tote bag. When I handed the oils to him, he physically backed away at first, and then completely surprised me by saying that he had guidance coming in. "You need to work with this woman." Thus, the partnership of the Vibrance product with Aero Mandalas produced a potent opportunity for both companies. I was later informed that he had been told about the intention disc having some kind of partner, but he did not know what it was until he connected with the Aero Mandalas. Weather windows. One year we had strange weather for our dolphin swim, which was unusual because I have always experienced wonderful weather in Hawaii. Good weather follows me wherever I go. In fact, during the 12 years I lived in Wisconsin, they had their mildest winters on record. The first year after I moved away was their worst winter in recorded history. New York City, during my first winter in my new home, experienced its mildest winter on record. In the early years I didn't realize I was influencing the weather in this way. This sacred journey dolphin swim started with unusual weather. On the first morning of our scheduled boat trip we were greeted with an electrical storm. At breakfast we all looked at the grim weather, wondering if we would get into the water that day. Our boat captain, Vito, called and asked, "What kind of group do you have? Are they determined?" "I think determined would be a mild descriptor for this group," I responded enthusiastically. Vito said he would give it an hour or so and see what happened. Shortly after breakfast we went directly into our meditation room and began a deep meditation petitioning Mother Earth to open up a weather window for our group to get into the water. Within 2 hours we were the only ones on the docks getting into our boat. A marvelous day was had by all, and both the dolphins and whales came. It was pure magic. The following day we encountered yet another electrical storm, completely different from the first. A new electrical bank was moving through the corridor off the Kona coast. This delay caused by the new storm sent the group into a meditation before breakfast, where we again asked for permission to get into the water with the cetaceans. We did this by creating an alternate reality and honoring the integrity of Mother Earth. This time our delay was only 1 hour. I will admit it was shocking to me that we were having these storms, and I certainly was not used to it. I checked with a few locals who informed me that these were the first and second electrical storms in Kona in 17 years. Something was up. Jackie, one of the participants, started asking questions too. Everyone who signs up for this dolphin swim is asked to do a daily prayer in advance of the trip on behalf of all the participants and providers of service, including the Elemental Kingdom. With all the work we did ahead of time, why did we have this terrible weather? Jackie wondered. Because we could make a difference, I mused. My seminar is organized so we take a break from the sun and sea after 2 consecutive mornings and have only classroom time for the next day. Then it is back to the ocean for an early morning departure. The previous evening of our classroom-only day, after the 2 days of electrical storms, I had been on the phone with my mother, who also lived in Kona. She told me I probably would not be able to go out to sea with my group the next day because they were predicting high waves. Being on the boat with high surf is impossible, even if the weather is clear. I mentioned my mother's prediction at dinner. Later that night, in their room, Jackie spoke with her daughter who was also on the trip. Jennifer encouraged her mom, a budding shaman, to go ahead and do a shamanic journey for this. A journey involves going into the alternate reality and working on the reality from that vantage point. Jackie checked in with her own guidance to see if it was appropriate to do a shamanic journey on the weather. In her tradition, once she received permission, she could connect with her personal power animal along with another animal that would be appropriate for the work she wanted to do. She called in a whale. On her shamanic journey she asked the whale if it could hold back the high surf. The whale initially replied, "No, the energy is too big." She suggested the whale could get help and the whale responded, "I do not know, we could try." The whale put together a pod of 6 whales to help hold back the high surf in our location. All of this occurred without my conscious awareness. The following morning when we arrived, the water was as calm as glass. I remember thinking as I looked at the tranquil sea that my mother is getting old and maybe she was confused. We had an amazing day. Dolphins came. Whales found us. A dolphin circled Laura, another of our participants, that day and buzzed her with his sonar up and down her entire body. We all saw it. It was a young dolphin but not a baby. Later Laura revealed to us that she was pregnant. In one of the dives I swam low, diving below the surface, with a colored scarf. One of the baby dolphins slipped away from its mom and tried to swim close to me. It truly was another magical day. As we traveled at a leisurely pace back to the dock in our boat, I kept seeing the picture of a breaching whale in my mind's eye, and suddenly a dolphin jumped right next to the boat. Vito knew this was unusual, so he followed the dolphin into a quiet bay. There right in front of us was a female whale with her escort and baby. They played around for a while and once we had our cameras ready the male escort made a phenomenal breach. This was larger than any breach I have ever witnessed in my 10 years of dolphin swims. Then as we watched from a distance the mother leisurely dove, giving us a full view of her tail for what seemed an endless display of her beauty. Our group yelled, cheered, and clapped in appreciation of this exquisite sight. The wind had started to pick up by the time we got back to the dock. When we arrived at the hotel the palm trees were bent nearly in half from the super strong wind. I had been planning on running an errand but decided there must be a really big storm behind all that wind and there was no way I was going out in that. A few days later I asked my mom if she remembered the strange wind around noon on that Friday and she said, "Boy, do I ever." First of all, it came out of the wrong, opposite, direction. The wind never blows from that direction. It blew and then within a half an hour turned completely around, 180 degrees, and blew in the other direction. As she spoke I was shown a slingshot. I was being exposed to how the whales had created a weather womb to hold back the weather for us. Figure 10.1. Whale Tail. Photo by Andrea Holian, CC by Saw. The shaman in our group had secretly asked for a sign. That afternoon in class she pulled the card, answered prayer. I could tell from the look on her face that something was up and insisted she tell me. After that she revealed her journey work of the night before and that she had asked for a sign to verify if her shamanic journey was the reason we had experienced the calm waters. It was obvious that the answer was an enthusiastic yes. I gave a radio interview about this trip on Dolphinville Radio, which you can find online. Holographic communication. Even though I have been with them many times, I really don't know much about dolphins. Nobody does. We do know that dolphins can communicate holographically. Anecdotal evidence supports this. There are many who see geometric shapes and other unexpected images around the dolphins. Swimmers say they experience holographic images, crystalline forms, diamond shapes, and more just popping into their minds after being with the dolphins. Beyond being life's blueprint, DNA plays a powerful role in newly discovered communications between dolphins and humans, according to a team of cetacean, dolphin and whale researchers at the Sirius Institute on the Big Island of Hawaii. A study there showed these marine mammals receive and transmit sound signals capable of affecting the genetic double helix, and that using natural biotechnology, Dolphins may heal humans swimming near them. 14 years of multidisciplinary study at this arm of the Human Dolphin Foundation indicate that the expression of DNA, traditionally considered the blueprint of life, can be changed by the sound and electromagnetic fields generated by dolphins. A startling report examines DNA's coiled design, vibrating action, and electrogenetic functions during bioacoustic interactions between dolphins and humans. The dolphin's acoustic and electromagnetic effects on the human body through DNA may best explain how remarkable healings, often reported by swimmers following dolphin contacts, have occurred. Dolphins have larger brains than ours. Should their consciousness capacity be greater than the human brain? One would think so, yet it is difficult to anesthetize them for research, as they are conscious breathers and must have a part of their brains alert at all times. Thus, they sleep with only one side of the brain resting at a time. When unconscious, they will stop breathing. This is also true of whales, who are also conscious breathers. Have you ever wanted to swim with dolphins? You don't have to travel to them, although that would be ideal. They will come to you. Just ask them to come in your meditations or dream time. In time they will start to appear in your dreams. One woman's young daughter could not come on our trip with her mom. Within a week of this little girl asking daily, they came to her in the dream time. When in the presence of dolphins, we are co-creating information in a new language between us. My friend, Joan Ocean, a well-known dolphin communicator, founded the Dolphin Connection organization to explore dolphin communication and human consciousness. She told me they ask that we send out a tone, thought, or feeling, and they will return the tone, thought, or feeling. They are changing our reality here in a way we normally would not understand, a way that is outside the box. It is all about unconditional love. They are moving us toward greater and greater awareness of group mind. Moving with one spirit takes us to the group mind, the next level of expression, where we can achieve perfection as we know it. This is fifth dimension. From there we may be able to move to higher and higher places of expression. Group mind is different from mass consciousness. Group mind is harmonious attention to the needs of all, whereas the term mass consciousness refers to the quality of sharing a belief about what is true, and then attempting to influence and control everyone else to promote and preserve this belief. Dolphin vibrations increase our ability to hear. They, the dolphins, have a much broader range of pitch than humans and can hear 7 times better than humans do. Their resonances with us activate broader frequencies in the human body. Your Merkaba becomes more firmly a part of your reality by connection with the dolphins. When you swim with dolphins, either in the water or in your dreamtime, you can rewrite your past and create a new present and future. This has come in handy on more than one occasion. Joan Ocean reports that the dolphins told her they are from Sirius and came into third dimension Earth in the 1940s, stating, "We are here to come back in time and to redo our history and make it right." Sounds like Star Trek 4. Think of the federal government's Witness Protection Program and consider the possibility of bringing a whole history to life, as Joan and I believe. What is their proof? They tell Joan they left one continent without any history of the dolphins, Australia. Those of you familiar with the Bible Code may have heard that the reason it is accurate is because an ancient culture came back in time to redo their history. Although these same records state that the first 5 books of the Torah were given to Moses, ancient Sumerian records show the existence of this information before Moses presented it. Asterisk 21. There's a similar story about the dolphins. According to the dolphins that Joan is in contact with, our solar system is speeding up because we are moving toward another solar system that is at a higher frequency than ours. The dolphins tell her that at some point we are going to merge with that one and we all will be at a higher frequency. My guides have also told me there will be a new Earth for those who wish to stay behind and continue in the third dimension. I have known about this since 1994 and recently discovered that another author, Lynn Gravhorn, has written about this. History and its importance. Dolphins do not have or desire the capacity to write or keep records. If they are more evolved than we are, why would they choose this? A researcher I recently came across presents his teachings as truth with a capital T, as if there is no other. This is an example of a recently awakened individual who has no sense of history or time and cannot comprehend why the saints or sages of old could have been given truth. It is nearly impossible for him to understand the history as we know it, since the timeline version of events he has tapped into is so new, there is no history behind it. In fifth dimension where dolphins exist, the dolphins do not use beliefs as a way of determining behavior. They are unconcerned about what people believe or think. One dolphin's insights are different from another's, so they do not compare ideas or thoughts or come up with a consensus of opinion to determine a common reality. It is only in third dimension, where we rely on the intellect, that this is done. In the fifth dimension it is unimportant to believe in anything. Fifth dimension beings choose their reality in every moment and enjoy what they have created in the moment. It's beautiful. What are the dolphins doing? My good friend Doug Hackett, who swims with dolphins almost daily in Hawaii and also works with Joan Ocean, tells the story of traveling with Joan to the Red Sea to do a dolphin swim with a tour company. The local owners of the boat heard that Joan had done a special meditation the previous day with the dolphins suddenly appearing immediately after the meditation. The following day the owner decided to join them to see this magic lady for himself. Since not much was going on, they inquired if Joan wanted to do another meditation to call in the dolphins. She declined, so Doug held his own solo meditation to connect with the dolphins of the Red Sea to see if he could discern what was happening. He asked them for their POD, plan of the day. He felt their energy and connected with them. When he asked them if they would like to swim with him, they responded, yes, but we are kind of busy keeping peace in the Middle East. Just when you thought all they did was procreate, play, and enjoy life. What about the whales? Drunvalo reports that whales go to the South Pole and get in a circle, nose to nose, and inhale for 12 hours. What are the whales doing? Tom Clark, a former Navy SEAL, saw this behavior. The second time he watched the video, during his second full workshop, he remembered synchronizing watches with other Navy SEALs before a dive. The whales explained to me that every year they go to the South Pole to synchronize with the magnetic field of the planet, so their internal navigation is oriented properly. Perhaps they are rebroadcasting a current version of the magnetic field for all the migrating animals. I was then shown that the whales act like cell phone towers. Just as human pilots must update their destination coordinates after 6 months, since the grids keep moving and changing, I believe the whales update everything else that relies on Earth's magnetic grids. 11. Working with Earth's energy systems. What you will learn in this chapter. What are ley lines and grid lines? What are implants and how do they interact with grids? What is gridwork and what impact do grids have on our lives? What are some of the specialized grids? Ley lines. Geopathic stress comes from a variety of sources. Geopathic lines can be deadly and are caused by the stress of the planet. I wrote about these lines extensively in Reweaving the Fabric of Your Reality. Geopathic lines are 360 to 500 feet wide, reach 5 to 6 miles deep, and can extend like a sheet 5 to 6 miles above the Earth. Underground water veins, sometimes called black water lines, ore deposits, and natural radiation from the Earth contribute to these lines. Gamma rays from the sun and other rays flow into the Earth's electromagnetic field and feed these lines. Man-made energies such as electrical systems, microwave transmissions, cell phone frequencies, and chemical and nuclear wastes are also feeding these lines. There is another form of energy created by humans that flows into the emotional body of our planet. Human suffering, slavery, famine, genocide, dying soldiers in war zones, and fears of repression and loss have created unresolved emotional trauma that has literally been sucked into the body of our planet. All these negative energies feed into a grid of energy lines that crisscross our planet. Different doctors have identified 2 types of these lines. A German medical doctor named Ernst Hartmann identified ley lines that run north, south, east, and west and are fed by the electrical grids. These lines are known as Hartmann lines. Dr. Hartmann documented more than 5,000 cases of cancer that were directly related to people sleeping on intersecting geopathic lines in his book Krankheit als Standort Problem, Disease as a Problem of Location. These lines are 1 to 2 inches wide and 6 to 12 feet apart on a grid, like graph paper. You can check for them by dowsing. Cats like them, and when they sit on the intersections, they convert the negative energy to positive energy. Cats generally choose cushy or warm spots to sit, so if your cat frequently sits on a spot that is neither cushy nor warm and sunny, it is very likely an intersection of energy grids being converted to positive chi. Thank you, felines everywhere. These lines are considered to be channels of energy circulation that are aggravated by electromagnetic energy. To clear them, put a copper omega symbol where the intersections occur or simply create a program in your Merkaba. You do this by saying, the negative lines of force on the Earth are completely filtered out by my Merkaba. A form of this program is found in the 7 basic programs. An American physician named Manfred Curry identified a group of lines that are commonly referred to as Curry lines. The Curry network is a diagonal grid to the Hartmann network. Its intensity is influenced by lunar cycles. There is a book with additional information on this written by a New Zealand airline pilot named Bruce Cathy. Precognitive dreams and visions of dark energies. My students have effectively employed this method to change the observed future, and so can you. How do you change a fearful future event and stay out of fear? What could you do when you are reading, or clairvoyantly seeing, or connecting with terrible events that might happen? The Merkaba is a manifestation field and you can co-create at will. I advise that you check in with your own guidance and ask, are these visions real? Do I need to do anything about it? Very often the vision is being given to you so that you will take an action and because you can do something. Remember, we are co-creators. You are not alone. Many of you have been given information so that you can help to clear the Earth of these dark energies. I have a keen awareness that many individuals are helping to solve the negative manifestations of those who would have us fail. Please know that you do make a difference. A metaphor for this is imagining trying to break a band of sticks that have been tied together. If the sticks are banded together, it's impossible. Yet if the band is divided into smaller groups, they can successfully be broken. We have strength in numbers. Jumping tracks. When you experience clairvoyantly, or hear of a plot against the will of the people, take a moment to see a parallel version of the reality where the plot fails. See their equipment malfunction. See both versions, or tracks, coexist until the moment right before the so-called event occurs. See humanity jump to the version of the reality that is devoid of their malintent. See humanity on a track of the reality that is close enough to fool those of malicious intent and see them wondering why it did not work. See them wondering, why didn't this catastrophe occur? Why did this thing not happen? Do this with peace in your heart. See yourself and hundreds of your light friends, seen and unseen, angelic and otherwise, smiling in happy victory, with a dark plan foiled again. See this visual, this movie of the mind, every time you start to worry or get anxious that those who would be false might somehow succeed. They will not succeed. Your visions are versions of the future that you have the free will to change. Although we have free will to change these things, I still check in to determine my part. I never assume I know. I do this with a benign energy, looking for a preferred version of the reality, as opposed to a right or wrong version of the reality, which might set up a polarity version. Every time you hear of a new plot to thwart the will of the people, you can be part of the action by creating the above scenario in your mind, which, by the way, is part of the quantum soup of the one mind of God. Run your movie of the mind every time fear starts to move inside of you. Stay in your power. Stay gentle. Stay sweet and loving. Always check in with your higher self, to see if this is an action that is appropriate for you. Begin with a simple statement of purpose. You might state, this far and no further. You are creating energy systems for Mother Earth or humanity to use when so desired. Remember, we are in the free will zone. Be clear that your energy gift is just that, a gift, exercising free will of all affected by this program. She decides if she will use it. She decides when. Allow yourself to reject what is happening from a vantage point of non-judgment. Simply recognize that the universe is full of choices and your choice is something else. Do this peacefully, joyfully. Wait to act if you are feeling anger, judgment, or heavy emotion, as that emotion can be used against the light. Remember that a good martial arts master will use her opponent's energy and redirect her. Your opponent can and will use fear, your energy, against you, just as has been done for eons and eons. This time is different. You are prepared. Choose to stay in your joy. Clearly intend that their equipment and technology, software or otherwise, will not work when it is programmed against the light. It malfunctions. Express your clear intent that any bad intention be turned upon its creator, causing confusion and error. See their equipment not working, see their bewilderment and smile. Be clear to avoid programming that is meant to deceive, manipulate, or defraud the reality you are creating. If you were to do so, you would be no different from them. Assuming your Merkaba is up and running, you may wish to create important common regional programs, such as a program to decommission the energies of contrails or other subtle mind-controlled technologies. Always make sure your Merkaba is active at all times. Remember to ask your higher self if you are required to keep doing the Merkaba before releasing your practice. At some point the Merkaba will be permanent, but you may still be asked to continue the Merkaba practice. Gridworkers Union and Dissolving Fear of Lack. The Gridworkers Union is a group of volunteers who have learned how to work with grids and volunteer their time and energy to support the changes on the planet. Our Gridworkers Union has taken on some of these possible future events. This is not something everyone is called to do. If this does not interest you, skip this section. I have been working with implants from certain 100% godlike extraterrestrial beings who have placed devices in individuals and in me, for the purpose of aiding mankind in its planetary ascension. These devices need to come through the human at upper dimensional levels such as 9th dimension. Anchoring it into 3D physical awareness requires the human to recognize this device and then release it at the appropriate time to the appropriate place, usually directed at the time of release. Each implant has a primary grid. Implants overlay grids and often are released into grids. These devices become recognizable because when they show up the individual is usually in a lot of pain. They coexist on multiple dimensions and they ease the device into 3D by anchoring it into the finer bodies at more evolved states, such as during meditation. The pain that occurs does not appear to be associated with an injury and is usually reconfirmed by checking in with guides or your higher self. I have assisted in a number of such sessions and have been directed to receive assistance for my own devices when they need to be removed. The following was submitted by one of our members who is working with the Lords of Light. She was one of our grid workers who did not really believe what I was saying about implants and unexplained pain until it happened to her. She also does a beautiful job of explaining switching tracks. During last month's call I shared a vision that the Masters of Light had given me. This vision actually started with their showing me a black screen of space with a darker band that ran in a horizontal strip across the larger black screen. Within the darker horizontal band of black spaciousness were these softly shaped, not crisp, geometric solids that looked like they were carved out of soapstone or chalk. I instantly knew these shapes were seeds, and as I saw the seeds the masters told me, this is not written, and then they give me the vision. So I knew this vision had been seeded but was not yet written. This vision linked in with two other things. Dreams of a warlike nature that I had been having, and a local event where a large incineration plant that supposedly produces electricity by burning chicken litter was almost a done deal for our town. This had come in before anyone saw what was happening. It was so odd that no one had been able to see this coming. So I realized that these three things, the vision, dreams, and local occurrences with this incineration plant, are all a part of the same occurrence on local, national, global, universal, and galactic levels. With Maureen's help I realized that the pulse I had noticed during the commissioner meetings regarding this incineration plant was there to keep people asleep. I kept noticing that the 300 people who had come to this meeting to voice their opinions and concerns regarding this plant were struggling to stay alert and awake. I sat in the meeting and I watched them go in and out of alertness in a very even pattern during the entire meeting. I thought to myself that this was so odd, but I did not know what it was. Then after I requested Maureen's assistance, she directed me to her full website, and the first thing I saw was the article about Hurricane Charlie and the elf waves, and I knew exactly what was going on during these meetings. In Chapter 6 I explained that the activated Merkaba makes you immune to mass consciousness frequencies, which is why she could feel it and send the elf waves, but no one else could. The gridworker continued. Maureen also directed me to her tools you can use article on getting out of fear, and specifically pointed out the rewriting tracks information. I immediately started using this tool, and all of these wonderful and very comical things start unfolding before my eyes. After asking for Maureen's help, it was phenomenal the level of help that instantly came from many levels. Thank you, Maureen. The higher tracks of this same event always came in with a very pure white light emanating through the scenes. I also saw these golden particles that were like holographic wisps floating all around and in the higher visions as I rewrote the lower into the higher. Eventually the golden wisps turned into beautiful golden cubes. I knew these golden cubes were the seeds for a very high version of the divine design unfolding here on all levels. Many synchronicities started occurring very fast, many times daily, no lag time, confirming for me that this was the appropriate path. For example, a friend who has no idea about this work gave me a set of 7 golden cubes and 7 golden spheres. They're Alexandrite cubes that have been covered in gold. Another friend came to me and said, while I was meditating today, I heard that I should tell you about what I was seeing. Then she shared with me that she was flying through space that was made up of a very pure white light, and she saw all of these golden cube shapes floating around her in this space of white light. So many things have happened that I cannot share them all, but this is one last thing that is important regarding the dissolving fear of lack grid, which was created to assist humanity through upheaval and changes so that people do not create more fear. I was reading one night and came across some information about a meditation room in the United Nations, UN, called a room of quiet. The information described the room, a long narrow room with a black cube and a painting. I knew I had dreamed this room before, even though I had never heard of it or seen it before. So I looked through my dream journals and I found a very detailed drawing of a room that I had drawn from a dream I had in 2005. I showed this to my husband and he said, let's look up UN meditation room images online and see. He did this and it was the exact room I had drawn from this dream. The details were the same, black cube, painting, and all. A friend of mine who was also doing this work with the Gridworkers Union and I decided to participate in the monthly meditations hosted by the United Nations by meditating at the same time as these scheduled meditations in their meditation room. On Wednesday the 8th of April, we left another meeting early so we could sit in meditation at the scheduled time. This was a powerful and informative meditation. A pure white light came in immediately. It was immense and easy to grasp. Then I was shown something very important. I saw that fear of lack as a vibration is being used to keep things down or to test us. I saw a mass of people representing people all over the world. I saw how fear of lack, if not supplied with an antidote, is being used to suppress people. I saw it keeps people in a state of chaotic panic and very separated from one another, the us versus them survival mode. They showed me how this is being implemented now, and this is obvious to anyone who watches the news or has lost income. Then I was shown the antidote or cure to this fear of lack play out before my eyes. I saw the same large mass of people that looked like an ocean of people. One by one the people started helping one another, assisting people around them. I witnessed people helping one another through simple acts of kindness or practical assistance where it was needed. This was done in a way that unites. There is no more other mentality. No more us versus them. In helping one another the sea of people rippled into a state of unity. People knew they were not separate from one another. This is the golden rule in action. We know our neighbor to be ourselves. There is no true separation. We are our brothers and sisters keepers. Wow. Since then I have been working with the dissolving fear of lack grid, the easy grid, and others. My UN assignment. Several months later I was called to do a meditation at the United Nations meditation room. It started with a conversation I had in Toronto with another teacher. She was telling me about a wedding she had attended in Mexico and how she and her husband had been called to conduct ceremony and activations while they were there. In response, I found myself announcing to her and myself that we are in a freefall for the future and all possible futures, including prophecy, and no longer are linked to this version of the reality. The freefall is like skydiving. In June of 2009 I was given an assignment by my guides related to this. The good news is that a parachute has been activated and there has since been a new and different future locked into place. The future is assured. Claim it. I had been trying to schedule our ceremony at the United Nations meditation room for a few weeks, to no avail. Then all of a sudden everything easily fell into place. Leslie was over for dinner and we had a wonderful chat about what we would be doing at our meditation. She and I would go together. I had been shown to approach this large stone altar, which was made of magnetite, and to treat it as if there were numerous drawers that could be pulled out laterally. I could see this at other dimensions. I was to pull out each drawer and replace parts of programming with different programming. This was also coming in from other dimensions. We were led to do toning in this room. For the most part there was no one else in the room. After the toning we sat in lotus and each of us left our bodies. I felt a huge column of light enter and I was gone in a flash. Leslie was able to maintain her focus at higher realms and could see other beings of light who were examining my work. She telepathed to them with concern, "Are you going to change it?" They responded by telling her, "That is not possible because Maureen did it." They said it could not have been anyone else. Later, repeating this story to the woman who first directed our attention to this place, she said she knew this the moment she met me. In her meditation she had seen all that I described to her, including the freefall from predictions and prophecy to a new version of the future. Update 2019. I was approached by someone who has worked at the UN for more than 20 years, while exhibiting at a trade show in New York, my current home. She said that she had been guided to come to this event, and that she would be shown with whom she needed to work. Her job was to ensure that I went back to the UN and did some specific work there. I intuitively knew that there was an upgrade required for the magnetite altar. As we had for the activation in 2008, we struggled to find a good day to do this around both of our schedules. Then it just fell together. I was able to be the conduit for another layer of programming that was installed in the magnetite for the present cycle. The heart grid. I encountered a family issue related to children being born with a hole in the heart. It is related to hatred of the mother through the male side of the lineage. I have been working actively to clear this at the cellular level, planetary-wide. I discovered this because of my own connection to this miasma. I was told to build 2 grids that week. The first one was for this program. There is a precursor to this information. As I mentioned earlier, I have been working with implants from 100% God-light ETs who have placed devices in individuals for the purpose of aiding mankind in its planetary ascension. These devices need to come through a human, so it is necessary for a human to recognize this device and then release it at the appropriate time. I have assisted in a number of such sessions. A woman contacted me from Hawaii. She had heard of me through a conference speaker and had saved my information for several months. Now she was being directed to contact me about the pain in her knees. She thought she had injured her knees while swimming with the dolphins. It did not make sense to her since she did not know when or how it had occurred, yet she was in a lot of pain. Through an Akashic Records reading with me, she was given very specific information that she had not taken an injury, but that the pain was actually caused by devices that were implanted into her body by ETs of the light. These devices were meant to be released into the atmosphere by her. The record keepers asked her if she was willing to do psychic surgery for the purpose of releasing these devices into the atmosphere. She was familiar with this work and agreed to do this at the appropriate time, for which she would be guided. I had already told her of the 2 blank grids that had been placed in the atmosphere for programming. I knew one would be used to heal the heart issues described above. Hatred of the mother manifesting in the family lineage of a child born with a hole in the heart. The following is her story. The first device is from the left knee, mother's love. It is the infusion of the mother's love. As humanity drinks in the pulsing, it will reverse the negative spiral to elevate the heart to a higher frequency of consciousness. This grid is an earth infusion completing the cycle of separation from the mother, providing Gaia and all her inhabitants with purity, innocence, and the ability to listen to and trust the heart wisdom. Family lines, which in the past would have continued to be carriers of this genetic weakness or miasma due to hatred of our mother, universal mother, will be downloaded with layers of love transfusion as if to alter the blood, offering a window for vitality to spark healthy sperm and egg union. All mutations of the past resulting from hatred will be corrected and the will of the soul entering will be empowered to co-create a healthy, vital, loving heart chakra and system in which to operate. So be it. During this time a member of our Gridworkers Union had a son who had expressed hatred toward his mother for the past 15 years. He returned to her, reopening the door for love to be received and freely given. He told her, "I feel like a big weight has been lifted from me." His mom responded, "My heart is doing a happy dance." The hatred from the past was cleared. Right knee. Return of the priestess to earth. This device was placed in a sling or sleeve whirling with color and life like a living embryo, Christed energy to assist with the holy union upon earth. It would be birthed within the second grid as a crystalline light, such as we have not known upon earth. This grid sets up a refined frequency to birth the internal balance of male and female in Christed union. This sets up the new matrix all have been waiting for, the second coming, and it occurs within the divine human now awakening. Then 2 whole and holy individuals are magnetized to each other through the heart of Christ consciousness, which has been birthed within them through this everlasting grid. The grid itself grows exponentially as these inner and outer unions create the matrix for the stairway to heaven on earth, opening the way for higher dimensional living for humanity's birthing of the crystalline ray. Masters of the Zeta Reticuli star system and Andromeda galaxy assist in bringing this creation into form. More device info. Energetic imprints of each device are to overlay, as a gift of love, the other grids, for which they are not primary. They will offer the secondary support frequency required, which will be put and held in place by dolphins. Prior to calling me, Joanna was guided to walk along the ocean at City of Refuge on the Big Island of Hawaii, a large picnic area by a grand bay that is quite remote and not usually frequented by visitors. Joanna walked to the far end of this bay and was prompted to return along the water's edge. When she was about halfway back, 2 whales appeared in the ocean moving with her in the same direction. They were active and breaching, staying visible the entire time, moving in the same direction. After this her discomfort and pain increased, eventually setting off a chain of events that caused Joanna to contact me. These two whales were the protectors of the Christed embryo until it was to be placed, that week, into the grid. They represented the matched Christed couple able to give birth to Christed creations on Earth. Activation occurred on February 19, 2008, the day before the full lunar eclipse. I had been planning on doing this activation on the night of the eclipse and was preparing for it, but then I was told to go ahead and work with the tools on the night of preparation, the night before the eclipse. I went to bed holding the tools in either hand. My knees were supported by a pillow, which also supported my hands so that I could continue to hold both the tools. I then offered myself in service to the legions of light and waited, and finally fell asleep. In the middle of the night the tools started vibrating so strongly that I was awakened by it. I started laughing because I could feel the vibrations of the activation throughout my entire body. Even though I knew they were not moving in third dimension, the vibration was clear and strong coming in from higher realms. This all occurred around the time I would have been in Hawaii hosting a dolphin swim. It was as if I were still working with the cetaceans and dolphins through this experience. What an honor. Later in that summer of 2008 some members of the Gridworkers Union and I were together in northern Georgia and were called to do some gridwork in the river. The whole process was preceded by my having a dream about a large group of people being held hostage. Coincidentally my assistant Leslie, who was a member of the Gridworkers Union, had the same dream that night, even though she was in New York. The power went out while I was having this dream. I woke up before the dream, noted the time on the digital clock was around 4:30 a.m., then fell back asleep into this dream. Again I awoke, noted the clock was black, no power, and fell back asleep into the dream, as if I had not woken. When I woke up I asked my higher self what was happening. I was told to do gridwork in the creek, behind the cabin, with Edward and Mark, two of the gridworkers, to clear fear. Gridwork key elements. The three of us sat in a triangle formation on rocks in the creek with our feet in the water. We began with the Merkaba. We then rotated our positions, changing seats clockwise 3 times. Each time we did additional energy work while holding various crystals. On the third change Edward, an amazing channel, was in the middle. He was guided to hold the Ankh and together we activated this new grid. He felt 3 large electrical type energy waves move through him into the water and earth. It was not painful for him, although he confirmed the energy jolts were substantial. Retelling our story in a gridworkers meeting, another member confirmed that we were clearing Atlantean fear grids. This gridworker had a crystal from the John of God Casa in Brazil, which holds strong, positive Atlantean energies. He reported that while Edward and I were sharing what had happened, his crystal became very active and he had the feeling of going back to the time Maureen, Edward, and Mark were doing the gridwork. It felt to him that the fear being released originated in the Atlantean fear grid. Due to this energy being released, people were less likely to resonate with the energies of fear. Leslie remembered that astrologer Madeline Gerwick had predicted that individuals would feel this feeling of being held hostage shortly after this date. I realized that this is not the first time we have been called to energetically shift the energy on something before it would have occurred. That same week, Lisa, another member of the Gridworkers Union, reported on an implant that she was guided to release into the water, and was also directed to connect this energy into the Easy Grid. This Easy Grid helps make the creating of positive change easier and less of a struggle, and is meant to reframe the "it will be difficult" mindset, so common in our Western culture. Lisa reported that she learned she had been carrying an implant in her right knee for a couple of weeks, but did not know why or when it was to be released. On a brief visit to a nearby lake she was guided to do the Merkaba meditation on the bank of the lake and to remove the implant during breath 14. She was then guided to release the implant into a grid that had been brought to the attention of the group on our Peru trip. 22 Lisa got the sense that the implant was soaking in the experience of why and how change can be difficult, so that once in the grid, the appropriate antidote energy could become readily available, thereby reducing the obstacles and struggle that can often accompany positive change. One of the delightful antidotes in common usage today is the "Easy" button from the Staples store commercials. In June of 2008 a group traveling with me gave birth to the sun disk and it is now in place in Lake Titicaca, Peru, beaming to the planet so people can align with the will of God. Numerous groups around the planet were working on this project simultaneously, without conscious awareness of one another. This validated our own experience when these reports surfaced. Specialized grids. Just prior to this Peru sacred journey another member of our group had activated a proactive grid called the Syrian Carbon Sequestration Project Grid. He has an amazing Syrian starseed friend, a microbiologist who has developed a process using microorganisms that could solve global warming if it were used at a large enough scale. The new grid will support his work. Another member is working on the Antidote Mania and Depression Grid. She begins with the angelic gridwork prayer. On an ongoing basis this grid antidotes mania and depression, as it is produced by humanity. At the same time she has been using the Remembrance Aero Mandalas Orion Series essential oil blend to clear shame. During this time of intense gridwork we found it was necessary for each of us to maintain spontaneity with our gridwork. I asked everyone to respond to the call of gridwork. One of our gridworkers describes her process. I do an opening ceremony as best as I can remember it, calling in all the beings of light, angels, and so on, and at the end of the opening ceremony, I state that it is my intention to do gridwork and I state on which grid I am choosing to work. From there I let it go. I used to remain in meditation and help with the work, but on Monday I was asked to do the grid work at my job. They told me that I am their vehicle to take them anywhere they want to go. Or better yet, their bridge between heaven and earth. Just get us there, that is, build the connection, said the beings of light, and we will do the work. That is exactly what I did Monday and Tuesday, and it definitely works. I built the bridge, so to speak, and went back to work, as a commercial electrician, until I was guided to do the closing ceremony. Without a doubt I felt their presence while they were doing the grid work, and I could feel it in those around me more than I ever have. One thing I would like to add is that since I have been doing grid work, I started about a month and a half ago, and I have worked solely on the clearing fear grid, my own fears have dissipated or vaporized like clouds. To quote the writer Rainer Maria Rilke, our fears are like dragons guarding our most treasured possessions. Another gridworker writes, on Sunday I had a phone conversation with a friend who has an ex-boyfriend who was not handling his manic condition very well. She spoke about how she initially drew a tight boundary around herself and pushed him away one night when he came to her, clearly in a manic state, needing help, and she merely called his father and let him go on his way, unsupervised, rather than staying with him until his father came to pick him up. She left his family to be responsible for him rather than get involved, and spurned his attempts to get in contact with her after the incident. She was judging his manic behavior and distancing herself from it. All of this information came pouring out of my friend yesterday, and as I spoke of my own experience with mania, that I do not like to be in the manic state and prefer to take medication that keeps me even and grounded, and that I accept my condition and know it is a part of my life and I have to control my symptoms always, her opinion of her ex-boyfriend began to expand and change. It was as if I were standing in for the antidote for mania, holding space for the grid, and giving her that information. People heal from this condition and they need others to be there for them. She started to consider emailing or speaking to him again, and offering support rather than non-compassion. She opened up the possibility that he is trying to reach out for help and understanding now, and she is beginning to listen to his pleas for connection to her. It was a conversation that only confirms for me that the grid with the antidote for mania and depression is working. I have never had such an open conversation about mania with anyone else before, and I know what I was healing were not my emotions, but those of the planet. And the fact that my friend is opening up to her ex-boyfriend in a more compassionate way is tremendous. She is starting to accept her role in his healing process. I am so very grateful for this opportunity and the grid workers. We are most fortunate to have this information and for you to begin to understand that individuals are making a difference. So can you. If you are called to join with others, ask for the connection that is part of your purpose or contract so you can unite with your brothers and sisters in this work. 12. Creating Heaven on Earth. What you will learn in this chapter. What is heaven? The levels of dimensions. What dimensions look like to our limited awareness? How you will know you are there. What is heaven? Look to the traditional faiths for descriptions of heaven. For most people, heaven is a separate place from the earth where you become your perfected self. In heaven your interactions are perfect. You have to die to get there, although once there, existence is eternal. It is the place where God dwells. Fifth dimension, 5D, is similar to what tradition calls heaven. Imagine your perfected self being fully connected to God. Consider the possibility that it could happen while you are still in your current body. Heaven on earth could be described as achieving this state of connection and perfection while still living in the body. It is our ideal state right where we are. As we become our perfected selves, we are also in the process of rewriting our history. Sometimes that may show up as forgetfulness. It is not that. Instead, consider the possibility that you truly are rewriting your history. I call it reverse déjà vu. Reverse déjà vu is when you are about to do something and you go blank. Wondering what in the world is wrong with you, you say, what was I just going to do? You did not forget. You are rewriting the reality. In that forgetting-like moment, your ego has completely disengaged from all the connections it normally maintains, which results in your availability to connect with another version of the reality. This new version is closer to perfection than the one before it. As you become more higher self-centered, and your ego merges with your higher self, these former, senior moments, can be redefined as multidimensional moments. Moment by moment you are literally rewriting your most recent history and causing a domino-like effect on all of existence. An activated Merkaba leads to reverse déjà vu. It makes use of the recompression and expansion of the time-space continuum. Wait just a minute here. Expansion and contraction of the universe. The universe expands and contracts once every 250 millionths of a second, according to a teacher of one of my students. I like that. I also happen to think it might be true. Why not? It makes for lots of opportunity for change, does it not? Imagine that. No wonder we have the ability to co-create. You have moved through more experiences, and as you are opening up, you may be noticing things you did not notice previously. This is happening planet-wide as everyone has been given the opportunity to connect with new codes coming from higher dimensions. This gives us new information that previously was not available to us. Each of us will find our own way, but at the same time, source codes have changed. This means that the default pattern that was here with mass consciousness has changed. Mass consciousness codes function like the autopilot setting that kicks in when the will does not make choices. Autopilot is the first version of everyone's reality. It is the basic dataset that dictates behavior for those who do not exercise choice in any given moment. Humanity's reboot. There are datasets being co-created and broadcast to humanity in a way similar to radio waves. The mass consciousness dataset has recently been upgraded by a few dedicated human souls. You can participate in that if you want. Clearly state your intention in your prayer work, and these volunteers, will actually find you. There are many groups on the planet doing this work. You can join them and should do so if it resonates with you. Some of this is identified as grid work. As of June 2009, our default patterns have been cleared from the mass consciousness dataset. This means that the default possibilities, probabilities, and prophecies, known from an alternate, earlier history of planet Earth have all been released and reformatted. There is a new energy opportunity and programming available to all who decide to participate. Deciding to participate is all that is required. A simple opt-in prayer will make the new energies more accessible to you. Old preferences, old beliefs, old pain and suffering all contribute to the rehash of old templates. Anytime you get the opportunity to try something new within the bounds of old pain and suffering, grab it. You will be very glad you did, and you will be pleasantly surprised with the results. In real terms, that means not reacting the way you used to. Instead, ask your higher self, in this painful situation, what should I do? I recommend opting in every day until you feel these changes are permanent. Eventually, everyone will participate anyway as their old records fade and cease to be available and therefore unusable. Anchoring these energies into your body will make it easier for all of mass consciousness to find their connection to the new energies, since they are now multiplied by you. Sight and vision. Many of you are noticing that your vision has expanded to include enhanced peripheral vision. When your awareness registers this, your ego wonders, what is going on? You are growing your awareness and expanding your vision. Why do you need to classify what is happening? Perhaps it is the ego trying to compartmentalize everything to keep it in its place. Move into wonder instead, and you will no longer have the need to know everything in terms of a relationship to everything else. Instead, you are able to view more than one relationship dataset at a time. This is what experiencing multiple dimensions is all about. At this point, you are starting to perceive fifth dimensionally, yet your cerebral function, your mind, is not quite ready to accept this, so visuals creep into your peripheral vision, and when you go for a direct validation, boom, it is gone. Soften your focus and allow your vision to show you what needs to be seen. Orbs. I believe this is why our cameras are showing us visuals that most do not see with the naked eye. Some of you are starting to see, with the naked eye, the orbs that your digital photos have shown. What are they? I believe they are energies that have always been there and are now being photographed by people who are vibrating at higher dimensions than the third. The factor of their showing up is the consciousness of the photographer. In some cases, the consciousness of the person being photographed has expanded to the point of influencing a larger field. Normally, the camera registers where you are in the moment by the visibility of these orbs. See figure 12.1. There is a factor of some darkness to capture them on the photo. Dimensions. I was intensely curious about the dimensions. I thought that if I could carry a greater understanding about them, I could comprehend the strange things happening around me. This is exactly what has happened. If I blindfold you and drive us to Disneyland, you might have a vague idea where it is, or how far away it is, but if I tell you the name of the place we have just visited, you can go there on your own. It is possible to recognize where you have been, which then enables you to return purposefully. Working interdimensionally gives you a greater understanding of life in its fullness that rewards you as the joyous mystery unfolds and is discovered. Figure 12.1. Photo of Maureen with orbs in the upper right and lower left of the photo. Asking for this information, I started with a blank template that listed each of the dimensions, leaving a space for the information. Essentially, the following information came and filled in the blanks. Gradually, and then in one big download, I was given the rest of the information. The dimensions are so vast that our ability to conceive of and comprehend them is limited by our perceptions. As we shift our perceptions from what is probable to what is possible, our vision, too, will expand to receive it. Even though I have attempted to outline the dimensions for you here, please understand that each of the dimensions has an expansive overtone series that provides for multiple variations of the dimensions. The multiples are almost limitless. This is more tangible in the 3D world than in the higher realms. First through third dimensions. First dimension is a point of self-awareness. It projects onto the screen of third dimension. From some vantage points, it coexists with second and third dimensions. First dimension is a complete awareness of itself as the center of form. As a musical form, it is the audible hum that is heard in certain kinds of deep meditation. Second dimension is two separate but equal points connected by a line. This line extends in two directions, length and height, but not depth, sort of like a piece of paper. These two reference points are you. Both of them are you. This line is flat. Vincent, one of my students, asked his higher, fifth-dimensional self to show him his first expression in matter. He saw a two-dimensional flat world that he experienced as us. The third dimension is a location that receives a projection beamed from the other dimensions around it. So like a multi-dimensional hologram that appears real, the third dimension is the playground, theater, for the projections of the other dimensions. Third gives us the ability to separate all the experiences into separate consecutive events. In creation, thought produces outcome. So having a child might produce a full-grown new human. The baby being born and all the details of growing up and childhood would be absorbed into the finished idea. Therefore, it is useful to look at life through the lens of steps that allow you to separate events and adventures. We used to be at the base of third dimension. Most everyone reading this book will be at the upper overtone regions of third dimension, and very likely fourth and fifth dimensions. Exciting, is it not? You can tell by the way things happen. In third, we learn to hurt and heal, to deal with matters working through the drama of good and evil. In the current, old days, one would want to escape third dimension to go to heaven. Now you understand that you can create heaven on earth. It is from third dimension that you can and will open portals. It is in third dimension that you begin to see the potential to create heaven on earth. Be inspired to create heaven on earth. Creating heaven on earth allows for all the dimensions to coexist. The stage and lighting may change as one evolves to higher realms. My first day of heaven on earth. I accidentally learned the benefit of claiming a day of heaven on earth while traveling home on an overnight flight from the West Coast to Wisconsin. I was disembarking from the plane at 8 a.m. when I was addressed by a familiar United Airlines employee. She greeted me with, "How are you doing, Maureen?" Without thinking, I said, "Fine, considering this is my day from H, since I have to be back here by noon to fly to the East Coast." I used to use that phrase, in the classroom, to provide a graphic description of a painfully intense day. I never had used it in my everyday language until now. Horrified by what had just come out of my mouth, I self-corrected and offered, "But I am having a day of heaven on earth because I'm flying with United." We both smiled and went about the day. Upon my return home I could hear water running, but no faucets were on. Then I discovered about 1 inch of water on the floor of my basement laundry room, and looking up, I could see water spilling from an open section of the wall. I immediately shut off the water to the house and called my retired neighbor, Gene, who came over to help me assess the situation. We called the plumber and he said he would be there in 30 minutes. Gene said he would come back to watch the plumber so I could get ready for my next flight. I immediately called United to request a change to fly the following day. They could not do it due to an oversold situation, but could offer me the later flight that night and would waive the customary change fee. I gratefully accepted their offer and began to do my errands and repack. The plumber came on time and determined, as we suspected, there was probably a burst pipe between the walls. He thought the upstairs bathroom was the place to start, to cut a hole. I asked my higher self and was told, no, downstairs bathroom. Handy, is it not? The plumber wanted to know where. My higher self directed us to start in a specific spot in a particular wall. From that point we could see the problem and needed one more hole, nearby, to access the problem pipe. It was fixed in 30 minutes and the bill was only $150. Gene helped me set up fans to dry everything out and promised to come and check it the next day. I was on my way home from my last errand, the bank, when I realized that I really needed only an extra hour. I could have caught my original flight. The phone was ringing as I walked in the door. It was United Airlines advising me that both of their feeder flights to Chicago were running about an hour late today. Because of this I would miss my connections to the East Coast. She asked me if there was any way I could catch the earlier flight, which was now leaving in about 50 minutes. Because my repacked bag was already in the car and I lived only 15 minutes from the airport, the answer was an easy yes. Sitting on the plane I pondered this unusual day asking, what is going on? My higher self informed me it was the statement, I am having a day of heaven on earth, that caused even a crazy day to turn out very well. 2 other times when faced with similar intense days I decided to invoke this prayer. After that I figured I could ask for it every day. You can, too. Here's how. I am asking for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I come into contact with and everyone with whom I am in contract. Pretty simple. Pretty amazing results. Fourth dimension. The realms of big emotions, fantasy beings, and the elemental kingdom all come from the fourth dimension. It is the dominion of Sasquatch and gnomes, fairies, and elves. If you can see them you are fourth dimensional in the moment and are seeing fourth dimensionally. The legendary stories of King Arthur and Camelot carry much of this fourth dimensional energy. The 1983 historical fantasy novel Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley incorporates the principles that were practiced at that time. In this feminine perspective of the Arthurian legend of Camelot she describes Morgaine parting the mists. She also shows us the accidental walking into Avalon by Arthur and his future bride. How did they accidentally get there? Perhaps it was the synchronicity of their first meeting within the same location of Avalon, creating a portal that gave them this access. Understand, the mists served as a gateway to the alternate, fourth dimensional world where the fairies and other beings like Morgaine hung out. Their entrance to this land was hidden from anyone who didn't have the ability to slide between dimensions. In the recent fantasy series Harry Potter it is similar to attending Hogwarts school by running at the wall to enter a part of the train station no one else knows about. Some of my personal experience with fourth dimension has been more prosaic. In 1994, after I had been teaching the Merkaba, I noticed some of my stuff was disappearing. It wasn't the kinds of articles that interest teenagers, so I knew it was not my son's. I would put something away in a drawer and go back for it the next day and it was missing. As a pragmatist all I really wanted was my stuff to return. This is when I started asking my higher self, where did my stuff go? You may remember from earlier in the book that the answer from my higher self was always the same: it is in a higher dimension. After a while, even that answer was not enough. Half of the time I believed it. The other half of the time I was sure I was making all this up in my mind. One day my son came home from school, threw his book bag on the floor, put something in it, and came into the kitchen to tell me a story. In the middle of his story he stopped, saying, "Here, I will show you what I'm talking about." He walked over to his book bag and reached in to get the item he had just placed in there, but it wasn't there. He turned to me with a shocked expression and said, "Mom, I just put it there," and I said, "I know you did. I saw you do it." Without even thinking, there in my own home with my son, I spoke out loud, "Oh, it is probably in a higher dimension. We will just ask for it to come back." Can you imagine what my 16-year-old son thought at this moment about his mother? I asked him to return to the kitchen and finish his story. By this time he had everything out of his book bag. He put everything back and came into the kitchen to finish the story. After it was finished, we moved back into the living room, where he reached into the top of his book bag and retrieved the missing item. I was not surprised, as it had happened so many times to me, but my son was flabbergasted. This was the first time I was sure I was not fabricating it. After that I told students in my classes to just ask for the missing item to come back from a higher dimension if your higher self tells you that. Do you recall the story of the missing cell phone in Chapter 5? Now you know the basis for the mystery of the man finding his wife's cell phone under the seat in his truck. After that I began teaching that there is only one question to ask: what is going on? See Chapter 4. One day when something disappeared again, I inadvertently posed that question instead of my usual, "Where did my stuff go?" The universe surprised me with the answer: "Maureen, you were in a higher dimension when you set it down." Ladies and gentlemen, if I am losing my objects in a higher dimension because I was there, so are you. You may have experienced an extremely emotion-filled moment and manifested your own miracles without realizing that this is normal for fourth dimension residents. For example, in a difficult separation and potential for divorce, and in an extremely distraught state, a woman said with passion, "If I had an extra $2,000, the fee the attorney she wanted to hire needed as the retainer, I would file for divorce tomorrow." The following day, she received a check from a concerned family member for $2,000. In a more positive example, another woman asked the universe to help her find a medical intuitive. This woman lived in a pretty high fifth-dimensional state most of the time. The following week, while camping some 100 miles away from her home, she made friends with a fellow camper who just happened to tell a story about her medical intuitive. Where did this woman live? In the first woman's hometown, yet she had not heard of her. The key here is balance. It is easier to laugh, cry, and manifest from 4D. It is also an arena of seduction, which means that on the downside, you can get caught in the quicksand of overly emotional realms. This explains why people tend to repeat themselves when they get emotional. The tendency to go forth is reflected in this pattern of repetition. This pattern of repetition also explains the pull of addictions. Suffering begets more suffering because people want to validate their victim state. They usually look for another person to tell their story to, repeating and reigniting the wounds. 23. The astral plane is found in the lower fourth dimension. I have never recommended that individuals go to the astral plane. The lower part of fourth dimension works like quicksand, making it difficult to pull yourself out of it. The astral plane is full of entities, demons, and other unsavory beings that can attach to you once you visit this realm. I consider it an undesirable part of fourth and recommend you aim to higher dimensions. Now that you have this roadmap, there is no reason not to aim higher. Recognizing fourth dimensional behavior. A way that consciousness seeks to maintain control is to elicit agreement. A group dynamic forms whenever a group of individuals join to commiserate or complain about something. These groups of individuals can be wallowing in emotional energy, which in turn exacerbates the situation. When you are changing how you are feeling about things, this downward energy can be dominant, but it has nothing to stick to permanently. A person can be sympathetic or empathetic. If others in a group ask your opinion, your third dimensional self might offer agreement. However, once you are expressing your fifth dimensional self, you have a detached and compassionate feeling toward this situation. Fourth dimension is still polarity based, so there is a high fourth and a low fourth. Low fourth can pull you into spirals of downward energy, such as crying jags or bouts of depression. On the other hand, the high ends of fourth are very close to fifth and the leap is easy. This is one of the biggest reasons why it is so useful as a bridge to fifth. Because the fourth dimensional energy can vortex downward or spiral upward, the split between energies is more dramatic. Music here is highly emotional, either like the blues, which sing sadness, or hauntingly beautiful melodies that embrace joy. Heart-centered music, such as Mozart or harp compositions, will help you stay in your heart throughout realms so you can move easily into fifth dimension. Fourth dimension is the environment that allows you to create very quickly. For example, imagine the spontaneity of driving by car wash and immediately remembering you wanted to get the car washed, and today there is no line and you have the time right now. The opportunity to co-create when you are in this state is significant. Because the fourth dimension still contains polarity, it can mean your dark thoughts will also quickly manifest. So there is merit to awareness that allows you to practice discernment. In this way you are in a place of conscious creation. From fourth it is easier to get to fifth because you are closer to it. The intervals are like music intervals. There are whole steps between each of the notes of a major scale except 3 to 4 and 7 to 8, where they are half steps. In the same way, it is easier to get to fourth dimension from third because it is so close. Once you are in fourth dimension, you can easily move to fifth. It is also useful to remember that fourth dimension still carries polarity, even though it appears magical to us from this perspective. The merit to knowing and understanding the fourth dimension is that you can recognize when you are expressing through it and then capitalize on it. Learn to recognize it so you can consciously choose to move into fifth. Consider fourth dimension a portal, a place to pass through, not a place to stay. Moving to fifth dimension. How is this done? Allow yourself to slide into non-polarity or non-judgment when you feel yourself becoming emotional. Allow yourself to feel the feelings and then pull back just a little to move into your heart space, and voila, you'll be in fifth instantly. How do you know you are in fifth? You will act and feel as if you are in love with everyone and everything. Nothing can touch you. You feel only love, joy, and compassion. Fifth can be a place when you are in your joy about some wonderful thing that you have experienced or understood or discovered. According to best-selling author Zecharia Sitchin, the Sumerians had 244 sensories, faculties with which to experience reality, unlike our 5 senses of today. Your conscious choice to experience more of the emotion you are capable of is vested in your willingness to appreciate each and every moment and emotion as being valued. In this way, your validated feelings will begin to sort and organize themselves into an understandable pattern that allows you to experience, recognize, and co-create from vaster states. Becoming fifth dimensional. There are many ways to experience fifth dimension. We are discovering more and more each day. One expression that I know for sure is fifth dimension is a place of fearlessness. When you are faced with a fearful situation and you feel no fear, you are fifth dimensional in that moment. Forgetting is another way to experience fifth dimension. Yet another way is to lapse into old behavior issues and think you are having a relapse, but instead you are revisiting one of the versions of your past, while you integrate all of them into universal understanding. I now understand we are folding old timelines like a braid into one single thread. Fifth dimensional fearlessness. In the early years of traveling to present the full workshop, I did not have a cell phone. One weekend my host told me when I arrived in Atlanta that she was really backed up at work and could I please take the MARTA, their mass transit train system, to her house, located on the other side of Atlanta from the airport. She would meet me there. Having lived in New York in my 20s, I figured I could handle it. Her instructions were to call her once I was on the correct train. Even though I didn't have a cell phone, I agreed to this, thinking I could call her from the platform of the train. What I did not realize is there are no phones on the MARTA platforms like I remembered in New York. Since I could not call her, I had to get on the train and figure out a way to call her. Otherwise I would be at my destination waiting for her. She knew it took 20 minutes to get to her stop on the direct train, and maybe 30 minutes if I had to transfer. She suggested I hop on the first train that came along, regardless of which one it was. When the first train arrived, no transfers, I grabbed my luggage and boarded, followed by 2 individual women. Then a man about 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighing at least 250 pounds got on the car. One woman got off, and then the other, leaving me and this man as the only occupants of the car. I noticed this but thought nothing of it. The doors closed and the train left the station. Immediately the large man came over to me demanding that I give him some money. I said, "No. Give me some money," he repeated. Again I refused. Then I thought that if he had a cell phone I would happily pay him to let me use it. So I asked him, "Do you have a cell phone?" "No," he shouted. "I don't have a cell phone." "Well then I am not going to give you any money." Can you imagine his confusion at this point? Then he said again, "Give me some money." I responded, "I mean no disrespect, but I am having trouble hearing you," pointing to my 3 suitcases in tow. "I just got off a plane and my hearing's all plugged up. Are you asking me anything different from what you asked me a few seconds ago?" "Just give me some money," he demanded. "Sorry, I do not do that." By then the train was in the next station and he moved toward the door. I said to him, "You might try sales, you are pretty persistent." I had absolutely no fear. This man may have been a panhandler and bully, but I felt no harm coming toward me. This is what is meant by being in a fearsome situation yet having no fear. That day I wasn't able to make my phone call, but I knew I had been successful in a more challenging dynamic. I act responsibly and pay attention to my surroundings. I never intentionally walk into a dangerous situation. I have been told to act quickly and change my plans on more than one occasion. Remember, I was told by my higher self to go home immediately after my workshops on September 10, 2001. In the transit car example, I knew there was nothing to fear, thus I felt no fear. Changing history. As a fifth dimensional being, you will be able to recall all events without experiencing the pain of moments past. This means you can literally have a memory surface and then choose either to anchor to that or decide, "No, that does not serve me." For example, when you retell the story of your wound, if you find yourself getting worked up about it and expressing emotion, you may be choosing the lower dimensional version of it. The ego holds on to painful emotions and behaviors for self-validation. Not letting go of past hurt, wounds, and so on is a way of the ego staying in control. It keeps you locked in a version of the past that throws an anchor into that dimensional level. It is a form of masking your present situation. Masking keeps you out of the present and does not serve you. It also limits your ascension work. As you remember your past with new, softer memories, you are tapping into alternate versions of the past that carry the wisdom that being fifth dimensional can bestow. This results in your telling your story with a sense of wonder and compassion. It is typical to have a sudden realization that there could be two versions of the same story. As you reconnect with your higher self, the need to hang on to old, painful emotions will no longer be appealing. As these memories fade, your recall will be accessing them from the universal mind, or Akashic records, which does not have the emotional charge carried by a person with body experiences. Remember, emotions reside in the body on the fascia, and there are many ways to remove them. Use your tools to expedite this process. Thus your memories will no longer be subject to the ego version, which allows great freedom to stay fifth dimensional. Knowing this invites you to access, and have the ability to understand, the many versions of your reality and allows you to shift and let go of pain and suffering. Freedom to remove the mask. Unmasking gives you the ability to see how fast change can move through you. The ego stacks layer upon layer of masks to maintain ego control. In reality, you are capable of much more than your ego perceives you are. As you shift, change, and let go, you unmask the limitations you put there to keep you safe. In the same way that parents put their children to bed in a crib surrounded with rails to keep them safe, but remove the restraints as the child grows, as you take off the mask, you will discover you can move through painful experiences very quickly. Just as a snake sheds its skin when it is outgrown, so also we can choose to leave behind any aspect of ourselves that does not continue to serve us. We do not need our painful experiences to define us. We can choose how we define ourselves in each moment. When the pain of the past no longer pulls us, we discover how really free we are. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. In one instance, a student who had cleared herself of a non-threatening mental illness contacted me. She had been well for quite some time but had recently been experiencing feelings of guilt and doubt about whether she really was healed. Because of our connection, she called me when her regular support person was not available. When she heard my voice, she almost instantly reconnected with her true essence in 5D. Prior to that, she had been experiencing connections to her past, like a reverse déjà vu. She observed herself in the previous expressions and then somehow slipped into one, like Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole. In her case, there were several reality shifts in process. One version, or timeline, which we will call version 3, contained the original template to this dysfunction and is now completely eliminated. Version 4 is still running and she occasionally visits it. It has some references to the former disease and still has a pull on her at the ego level. It is also reinforced by her family and their medical understanding of the reality. They feel the need to be witness to this and for them to be right. Her father, a psychiatrist, projects clinical behavior onto her based on his understanding of it. Her mother carries guilt about her daughter's suffering and worries that she could have done something to prevent this from occurring. Because she loved and respected her parents, she allowed their versions of reality to overlay her own experience. The version 5 timeline is the latest, clean, history, now running in her world. She has access to the memories of her illness, but they are no longer dominant. Version 5 is fully accessible to her family members, who prefer version 4, however for her it is a living, fifth dimensional field. Seen by her family, version 4 contains enough elements of version 3 to be recognizable to them. Viewed from her vantage point of version 5, she sees the perfection in all of it. She now has the ability to shift into those separately, which she did, so that the last part of her upgrade could be completed. She briefly panicked when she thought she was back in the old expression of version 3, when she was there temporarily before it was completely eliminated. Version 3 was not completely eliminated until after the last bits of adjustments to her version 4 were completed. This upgrade needed to finish, so that when she accesses it in the future from version 5, it will have no attraction to her. In her case, it was a real temporary location, which is why she mistook it for her current residence. She really was there, albeit temporarily. Imagine wearing your old raincoat while your new one is at the cleaners, because not wearing a raincoat was unthinkable. That is, until you access fifth dimension. In fifth dimensional expression, no raincoat is required, which allows her to revisit these memories without attachment at the ego level. As a result, she has presently anchored that part of herself in fifth dimension. In a normal, unevolved human, the ego uses these holding on historical reference points to manage this system of information. As you move from ego, you resolve this issue and move to the universal perspective that embraces all of the versions of experience, and then choose to reside in the one that is most pleasing or useful in the moment. Fifth dimension, first level of non-polarity. Fortunately, with an activated Merkaba you will become fifth dimensional. It is totally amazing and true. Seems pretty simple. Many actually are consistent enough with their practices to achieve this. You can, too. Remember to be aware of what you are eating, drinking, and smoking. If you are being pulled away from any particular substance, let that be the signal to change an old pattern. It is also the time to stop judging yourself no matter what your shortcomings are. Doing the Merkaba, along with your higher self-connection practices, which include claiming those blows to the heart, you stand a very good chance of becoming fifth dimensional right where you are. In my opinion, one of the fastest ways to advance spiritually is to keep opening your heart through blows to the heart. See Chapter 2, Fifth dimension is akin to what the rest of the world might call heaven. It is where relationships, body type, size, age, and so on are all perfect. One time I was with my host the day after an amazing class filled with wonderful people and exceptional experiences. We were both extremely joyous. She lives on a hill in the countryside and we were sitting on the front porch watching the morning sunrise. The birds were singing like crazy. It sounded like we were in a jungle. We chatted softly with our hearts so open. My host commented that the bird singing level was unlike anything she had ever experienced on her front porch before. She wondered what was happening. We both were told that we were in fifth dimension in that moment. A few minutes later, when the conversation turned to more mundane things, including complaints and criticisms, the chirping and singing stopped. Listen and the birds will tell you when you are in fifth dimension. Sixth dimension. The first place you start to move toward group structure. Sixth dimension is the place where we often go to during the dream time. It is a place that has structure and form if we desire it, but does not require it. It is the place of all templates for basic structures on Earth. For example, DNA, geometry, and light languages are structures that form the basis for developed expressions and experiences in third dimension. In sixth dimension, you are so sated with individuality from fifth that you are ready to begin to express in groups. Yet the structure of group is still being refined. This is the zone where you might begin to recognize other versions of you and recognize your work in someone else. You are already collaborating in sixth and bringing it forward to third. In order for a group to work together, the members must create a form or template to support their joint efforts. Sixth is the realm of these master templates. You might use your Merkaba to support creative endeavors as the basis of your group forms. Seventh dimension. Moving to group expression. Seventh dimension is coming directly in from source, yet it carries the material aspects of precision. The basis for group expression is found here. As such, this is the last place you can experience yourself as separate. As a member of a group, your individuality expands to include group expression. To understand this, imagine MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, can serve as an example of seventh dimension in that it displays group expression. First, the template of the organization is formed, sixth, and then the desired expression moves through the template, group. The MAD organization, group expression, succeeds in getting legislation passed and education into schools, and ultimately the organization saves lives. Seventh is a place where you feel such sweet emotional connection with consciousness, as expressed through souls similar to yours, that manifestation in groups comes easily. Imagine a school of fish or flock of birds that is so connected that the individual members all move in unison. Eighth dimension. Moving to group awareness. Eighth dimension is so vast that from this vantage point, third dimension, it is difficult to comprehend. You not only function in alignment with the group, you perceive yourself as the group. In eighth, one cannot experience the self as separate, as found in seventh and below. Generally, when consciousness is focused here, the third dimensional self blanks out. The force of life becomes the collective collaborative whole. Although groups exist in this domain, the limitlessness of consciousness permeates. This is the arena where you are more we than I. Ninth dimension, collective consciousness. Ninth dimension experiences life inwardly focused. It represents the collective consciousness of planets, star systems, galaxies, and dimensions, yet awareness is inner-directed. As such, it holds the vastness of collective consciousness. It has no polarity, as with everything above fifth dimension, and as such is not agenda-driven like mass consciousness. Napping during meditation. What is really going on and why? I have encountered many circumstances where individuals have apparently gone to sleep while in deep meditation. I used to wonder why they would do this. Of course, sometimes the body needs to be extremely still. Sleeping is more likely to make that happen easily. I asked my guides about it and this is what I discovered. When a person is apparently sleeping but immediately wakes when the meditation is finished, she has been in other advanced dimensions, usually ninth and beyond, where there is nothing in common with the third dimensional reality to make an association. Thus the mind blanks out and the body goes on holiday. It usually is a lovely respite because the sleep is tied to an evolved state, which produces endorphins and energies. Although not consciously understood, they usually can be felt within a short period of time and produce euphoria otherwise unattainable. Twice while writing this, my guides literally gave me this experience. Although I had not done this before, left my body while typing, and the typing stopped, it was like falling asleep. Upper creation realm, 10th through 12th dimensions. 10th dimension is where the beings of the basis for creation exist. Their energy is so vast it is really beyond our initial ability to understand. This is where the divine blueprint is formed. This is the source of the Vedic system of the 7 rays and the Hebrew Elohim. It is the source of the great central sun energy as taught by the ascended masters. It is source code at its finest. It is where you will find the source code of the 10 seed groups of humanity. 11th dimension. 11th dimension is a wonderful place of anticipation. It is the place where concept is more alive than form. It is an environment of the integrated awareness of the separated parts of God, held in a place of union and communion. The place of union is so ecstatic that it defies description. We find the Akashic records here. Remember, the Akashic records are a living field that shifts and changes. Even though we use the word records, which implies permanence, it is more of a living, breathing environment. Have you ever been to a wave pool at a water park? It is like that, contained but moving. 11th is the region of the archangels and of Lord Metatron, the keepers and mathematical codes that include the genetic codes for the expression of all the versions of the reality. Even these descriptors are finite. The energy here is so vibrant and kinetic it defies description. It also contains a quality of euphoria that would be akin to the moment before orgasm. Being connected to the 11th dimension, for me personally, has changed my life dramatically. Once you have experienced this, you really are never the same being. In certain environments while working in the Akashic Records, I spend 5 to 6 hours a day in this zone. My close associates have commented to me that these extended periods of time in 11th have changed my appearance dramatically, seeing more light emanating from me. 12th dimension. 12th dimension is the place of pure consciousness and light consciousness. It is the environment that is so connected to itself that there is no separation of any kind. It is, for some, the stopping point of creation. 13th dimension. 13th dimension appears to me as unity consciousness and a place for new beginnings. I have experienced this energy as the place where any thoughts of not God would cause pain and are truly unthinkable. Love is the essence of all here, and even this description is insufficient. Becoming multidimensional. I keep forgetting things. What is going on? A multidimensional moment. One of the ways to experience multidimensionality is to completely go blank. Generally, when you forget what you saw or did in your meditation, you have gone so high that there is no reference point. In conceptual terms, it is like comparing a first grader to a grandfather. It may be possible for the grandfather to connect with the child, but the child does not carry any understanding of what it is like to be a grandfather. Another way the mind deals with the overload of changing the way you experience and understand the world around you is forgetfulness. You are about to do something, and then you realize you have forgotten what you were thinking about and you are afraid it might be serious. We addressed this earlier in the section on reverse déjà vu. These moments are a form of unhooking from the ego's holding on mechanisms. Call it a multidimensional moment. Why is this happening? This is a direct result of going fifth dimensional. If you have a TV with a PIP feature, picture-in-picture, you can see more than one channel at a time. In my son's college dorm, they had a bookcase that held 4 different TVs. They did not have the money for fancy equipment, but they accomplished the same thing. You are essentially viewing multiple screens the way these college kids did. You are starting to gain awareness of other dimensions but without the language or full mental capacity to understand how it works. You will simply forget where you were as you shifted from one dimension to another. And where you were could be 5th dimension or beyond that. Initially, the ego thinks it is losing control. This is normal. As your practice of the Merkaba grows, your ego will be able to begin to trust your higher self's knowledge, and this will get more settled. If you have not committed yet to the higher self practices found in chapters 4 and 5, now is a good time to start. Remember that the old life is dying and the new life is emerging. This is nothing to be anxious or concerned about. Sleep and lack of ambition. The best news I have is that if you are finding yourself sleeping a lot more than you used to, you are probably going through an upgrade in consciousness. It is easier for your body to integrate the most evolved version of yourself that you can tolerate on this planet at this time when you are asleep than when you are awake. You find this drowsiness comes up and just knocks you down for the count. Your best choice is to sleep. And then, for heaven's sake, don't judge yourself. Losing your ambition is also related to this. Remember the discussion earlier about a multidimensional moment. Letting go of current motivations that are coming through the ego, which believes in some sort of rules of mass consciousness, is purposeful. If you are feeling this lack of ambition, you might be tempted to reprogram or upgrade your motivations. But sometimes it is easier to release your need to have motivations at all and simply let go. Initially, your 5th dimensional self will appear as a singular, sweet self. If you have any emotional baggage, it can reappear, as you are now able to hold on to more than one version of the reality. This can be quite disconcerting. Just remember, if this happens to you, to ask your higher self for the most evolved version of you to show up and manage this integration. Your higher self will allow your awareness to recognize that you can choose the expression or version of you that pleases you. If you keep doing the Merkaba, these variations will settle down and the version of you in your history that works best for you will become dominant. The Merkaba clears and balances every part of you. Keep your practice going through any crazy times and you will find it is easier to stay centered and in your heart through all of it. 13. Christ Consciousness Grid. What you will learn in this chapter. Where did the grid come from? What does it do for us? What does it look like? What are we supposed to do with it? If you ever see the Christ Consciousness Grid while stargazing on a dark night, you will be awestruck with the beauty and symmetry of it all. The Christ Consciousness Grid is an etheric crystalline architectural structure of energy that envelops the earth and holds the energy of the Christ, or perfected human. 24 is such. It radiates and attracts the vibration of the most evolved possibility of human life on planet Earth. Cheryl Boyk's Earth Grid Image. Visionary artist and somatic psychotherapist Cheryl Boyk created a grid rendering titled Regaining Cosmic Integrity copyright based on a vision of the Earth poised in a starry sky that occurred while she was meditating. I was just emerging from my own dark night of the soul and was accustomed to nightmarish visions, she said. It was most unusual for me to see something so beautiful as the image you see here. Within her vision she heard the words, I becomes, we must become, we to continue. Boyk didn't understand this until a day or two later when a book fell open in front of her to a Native American injunction. You must bring your vision before the people. Although she had no artistic background, Boyk was guided to create a triptych of 3 large lightboxes for 3 Apollo space photographs of Earth. Superimposed over the images are polyhedron lines, first fragmented, then linked, and finally encircled by intersecting polyhedron lines of light. Boyk's use of the words, cosmic integrity, is significant. It is a 5th-dimensional expression evoking absolute integrity. Figure 13.1. Cheryl Boyk was guided to create this lightbox image, regaining cosmic integrity copyright, based on a meditative vision of oneness. What is the origin of the Christ Consciousness Grid? We know that the Christ Consciousness Grid comes from the Ascended Masters. Drunvalo tells us that the Ascended Masters built it for us and that it is a tool to assist mankind in its evolutionary process. In Volume 1 of The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, he reports that the Ascended Masters appealed to the galactic command for ideas to avoid humanity's destruction. I experienced this group as the Council of Light and I believe they are the same beings. We were running out of time and needed a significant boost to achieve ascension, otherwise there was a strong potential for self-destruction. Since we are in a free will zone, this was not an easy matter. Upon examining this crisis, the Council of Light created a plan to construct the Christ Consciousness Grid around the Earth as a solution to help us avoid probable self-destruction. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know where it originated. I wanted to know where the master plan blueprint for the grid was created. What was its source code? I kept thinking that it had to be very specific for the Earth, otherwise it would not work. The answer I was given was deceptively simple. The Christ Consciousness Grid came from our future. Initially, that answer was sufficient. If somewhere in our future the Christ Consciousness Grid had been built by humanity, because we were Christed ones, then it would be perfect for us. But then one day while working on you are the genie in the bottle. Material, the answer just floated into my awareness. What the Ascended Masters did was create a thread toward a possible future that allowed them to see the final result. Much as we create in genie manifestation work, where we imagine beyond our desired outcome first and then create a thread back toward it, I believe the Ascended Masters executed a similar procedure and then followed the thread back to the outcome that showed them the version of the future where mankind had achieved Christ consciousness. In this location there was already in existence a Christ consciousness grid that we, humanity, had built. The Ascended Masters replicated this grid from our future and created it in the present time frame as the Christ Consciousness Grid. This is